I never thought delivering food would lead to the most satisfying revenge of my life, but here we are. My name's Alex, and I've been doing DoorDash deliveries for about 3 years now, mostly on weekends. What started as a side gig to stay busy turned into something I actually enjoyed. The flexible hours gave me time to manage my real estate investment portfolio, and honestly, I just liked meeting people. Well, most people. Then I met Karen Whitmore, president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA, and everything changed. Meadowbrook Estates was one of those cookie-cutter suburban developments where every house looked almost identical, the lawns were measured with rulers, and apparently, delivering food was a criminal offense. I'd been dropping off orders there for months without incident until that Tuesday evening in September. I pulled up to 723 Oakmont Drive, hazards flashing, DoorDash bag in hand. The delivery instructions said to leave it on the porch, ring the doorbell, and go. Standard stuff. I was in and out in 90 seconds tops. I was pulling away when this woman came sprinting out of the house next door, waving her arms like I'd just robbed a bank. She was in her mid-50s, blonde hair shellacked into a helmet, wearing a velour tracksuit that probably cost more than my car payment. Her face was already red before she even reached my window. If you enjoyed this story so far, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this is going, and subscribing means you'll catch every single satisfying moment of karma we deliver. Now back to Karen. You need to move your vehicle immediately. This is a clear violation of Meadowbrook Estates Code Section 4.7, subsection B. She was practically spitting as she talked, jabbing her finger at a sign I hadn't noticed. No commercial vehicles between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. I glanced at my phone. 7:42 p.m. Ma'am, I'm just delivering food. I'll be gone in literally 30 seconds. I tried to keep my voice level, polite. Customer service mode, even though she wasn't my customer. I don't care what you're doing. You are operating a commercial vehicle in a residential zone during restricted hours. I am Karen Whitmore, president of this HOA, and I will not tolerate blatant disregard for our community standards. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of my car, my license plate, even me through the window. I wanted to argue that my personal vehicle wasn't technically commercial just because I was using it for deliveries, but something in her eyes told me logic wasn't going to work here. This woman fed on conflict. I apologized, said it wouldn't happen again, and drove off. I thought that was the end of it. I was so wrong. The next day, I got an email. Somehow, this woman had tracked down my personal email address. The message was 6 paragraphs long, citing various HOA codes, threatening legal action, and demanding I cease all delivery activities in Meadowbrook Estates immediately. She CC'd someone named HOA_enforcement at meadowbrookestates.com. I deleted it and moved on with my life. But Karen wasn't done. Not even close. Over the next 2 weeks, I got 4 more emails, each more aggressive than the last. She'd apparently filed a formal complaint with DoorDash, though the company sided with me since I hadn't actually violated any of their policies. That only made her angrier. Then she started calling my phone. I have no idea how she got my number, but suddenly I was getting calls at all hours. 8 a.m. on a Saturday. 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. Always the same thing. This is Karen Whitmore, president of Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Your continued disregard for our community standards is unacceptable. I am documenting every violation, and I will pursue legal action. I blocked her number. She called from different numbers. I started ignoring unknown calls. She left voicemails, sometimes 10 minutes long, reading HOA bylaws in that shrill, self-righteous tone. My girlfriend thought I was dealing with a stalker. In a way, I was. The breaking point came when I accepted a delivery to Meadowbrook Estates without realizing it until I was already there. Different street, different house, but same neighborhood. It was 3 p.m. on a Sunday. I parked legally on the street, delivered the food, and was back in my car in under 2 minutes. As I pulled away, I saw her. Karen, standing in her driveway 4 houses down, phone already out, recording me. She was smiling. Actually smiling. The lawsuit notice arrived 5 days later. Karen Whitmore vs. Alex Chen. She was suing me for harassment, trespassing, and emotional distress, claiming my repeated violations of HOA policy had caused her severe anxiety and diminished her quality of life. She was seeking $25,000 in damages. The filing was 32 pages long. 32 pages about me delivering pad thai and burrito bowls. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not an idiot either. I knew this lawsuit was frivolous. Any judge would throw it out. But that wasn't the point. Karen wanted to make my life difficult, to punish me for daring to exist in her neighborhood without her permission. The filing alone would cost me time and money to respond to. She was weaponizing the legal system for her petty power trip. I sat in my home office that night, staring at the lawsuit, and something clicked. See, most people don't know this about me, but before I started treating DoorDash as a casual side gig, I'd spent 15 years in commercial real estate development. I'd retired early after selling my stake in a development company, and I'd done very well for myself. The DoorDash thing? That was just because I got bored staying home all day. I liked driving around, listening to podcasts, meeting people. It kept me active. But I still had connections. I still had resources. And I definitely still knew how to read property records, HOA documents, and legal codes. If Karen wanted to play games, I'd play. But I'd play to win. I started with the basics. Public records showed that Meadowbrook Estates was developed in 2008 by Cornerstone Development Group. The HOA was established simultaneously, with standard restrictive covenants covering everything from fence heights to mailbox colors. Karen had been president for 6 years, running unopposed because, from what I could gather online, everyone was too afraid of her to challenge her position. The HOA bylaws were publicly accessible through the county recorder's office. I spent 3 days reading every single page, highlighting sections, cross-referencing codes. That's when I found it. Section 12.4. Commercial Vehicle Restrictions. The exact code Karen kept citing against me. It prohibited commercial vehicles from parking in the development between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. without prior written authorization from the HOA board. But here's what made it interesting. The definition section defined commercial vehicle as any vehicle weighing over 10,000 pounds, any vehicle bearing commercial signage, or any vehicle registered as commercial with the Department of Motor Vehicles. My Honda Civic weighed 3,000 pounds, had no signage, and was registered as a personal vehicle. By the HOA's own definition, I wasn't driving a commercial vehicle. Karen had misinterpreted her own rules. Or more likely, she'd stretched the interpretation to suit her agenda. Either way, her lawsuit was built on a foundation of nonsense. I could have just filed a motion to dismiss, showed the judge the discrepancy, and walked away clean. But that would only solve my problem. It wouldn't solve the Karen problem. I kept digging. The HOA had an enforcement history posted online, part of their transparency requirements. Over the past 6 years, Karen's administration had issued over 300 violation notices to homeowners. 300. In a neighborhood of only 72 houses. People had been fined for leaving trash cans visible from the street, for painting their shutters the wrong shade of approved beige, for parking cars in their own driveways overnight. One poor guy got fined $1,500 because his lawn was measured at 3.2 inches tall instead of the required 3 inches exactly. Another family was cited because their Christmas lights were visible after January 2nd. The enforcement was relentless, petty, and entirely focused on control. But the most interesting finding was about Karen herself. Her property, 615 Oakmont Drive, had never received a single violation notice. Not one. In 6 years. I found that statistically impossible, so I decided to take a closer look. I drove by her house one evening, slowly, legally, observing from the public street. Her mailbox was slightly crooked. Section 8.2 required all mailboxes to be perpendicular to the street. Her front yard had decorative rocks lining the flower beds. Section 9.1 prohibited any landscaping materials not explicitly approved in writing by the HOA Architectural Committee. I checked the meeting minutes online. No approval for decorative rocks at 615 Oakmont Drive. Her garage door was a different color than her front door. Section 7.4 required all exterior doors on street-facing facades to be the same approved color. And perhaps most damning, there was a small satellite dish attached to the side of her house. Section 11.6 explicitly prohibited satellite dishes visible from the street without written variance approval. Karen's own property violated at least 4 HOA codes. She'd been enforcing rules on everyone else while exempting herself. The hypocrisy was stunning, but it was also useful. I made copies of everything. Photos, bylaws, enforcement records, property records. Then I called my attorney Marcus, who'd handled my real estate deals for years. I explained the situation, sent him the lawsuit filing, and asked him to draft a response. Not just a motion to dismiss. I wanted a countersuit. Malicious prosecution, abuse of process, harassment. I wanted Karen to understand she'd picked the wrong delivery driver to mess with. Marcus filed the response 2 weeks later. In it, we systematically dismantled every claim in her lawsuit, cited the actual HOA bylaw definitions proving I hadn't violated anything, and included photos of her own property violations as evidence of selective enforcement and bad faith. We asked for $50,000 in damages, legal fees, and a restraining order. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for November. But I wasn't going to wait for court to teach Karen a lesson. I had a better idea. A perfectly legal, absolutely devastating idea. I started researching the properties in Meadowbrook Estates that were currently on the market. There were 3. 2 single-family homes and 1 vacant lot at the end of Oakmont Drive, right across the street from Karen's house. The lot had been sitting empty for 2 years, priced at $85,000. I called the listing agent and made an offer. $75,000 cash, close in 2 weeks. They accepted immediately. Now I own property in Meadowbrook Estates. Which meant I was subject to the HOA. But it also meant I had rights. Member rights. And I intended to use every single one of them. The HOA bylaws allowed any member in good standing to file violation complaints against other properties. The board was required to investigate all complaints and issue notices for any confirmed violations within 30 days. I filed 4 complaints against Karen's property. The crooked mailbox. The unapproved decorative rocks. The mismatched door colors. The satellite dish. I included photos, specific bylaw citations, and a polite request for prompt enforcement. I also requested copies of all Architectural Committee approvals for 615 Oakmont Drive for the past 7 years. Public records request, totally legal. When the HOA secretary responded saying no such approvals existed, I filed another complaint for unauthorized modifications. But I wasn't done. Not even close. See that vacant lot I bought? I applied for architectural approval to build on it. I submitted plans for a structure that complied with every single HOA requirement. Maximum height, proper setbacks, approved materials, approved colors. Everything by the book. What I was building was a wall. Technically, it was a decorative privacy fence, 10 feet tall, the maximum allowed height. But it wasn't around a backyard. It was positioned on the front property line, directly across the street from Karen's house. The plans showed a solid structure, approved materials, painted in HOA-approved beige number 7, with no windows or gaps. Just a big, beautiful wall that would completely block Karen's view of the street from her front windows. The Architectural Committee had 30 days to approve or deny applications. They could only deny if the plans violated HOA codes. Mine didn't. Not a single one. On day 28, I received the approval letter. Construction started in December. It took 6 days to build. Karen came out on day 2, screaming about how this was unacceptable, how I couldn't do this, how she'd sue me into oblivion. I just smiled and waved. The construction crew kept working. This is harassment. This is retaliation. I'll have this torn down. She was recording everything on her phone, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk. I walked over, staying on my property. Ma'am, I have full architectural approval from the HOA. Everything is up to code. If you have concerns, I suggest you take it up with the board. You know, the board you're president of. Her face went purple. She stormed off, and I knew she was going to fight this. But here's the thing about HOA rules, they apply to everyone equally. That's literally the point. And I had followed every single rule. The wall was completed on December 18th. It was magnificent. 10 feet of solid, beige perfection, running the entire width of my lot, completely obscuring Karen's view of the street. Every time she looked out her front windows, all she'd see was wall. To get her mail, she'd have to look at wall. To leave her house, wall. Coming home, wall. But I still wasn't done. Remember those violation complaints I'd filed against her property? The HOA board sent her the notices in early January. 4 separate violations, each with a 15-day cure period and a fine schedule that started at $200 and escalated for noncompliance. Karen tried to dismiss them, tried to claim president's privilege, tried to argue selective enforcement. The HOA attorney, who I'd helpfully educated about liability issues involving selective enforcement, advised the board that all violations must be treated equally to avoid legal exposure. Karen was furious. She held an emergency board meeting to try to change the rules, but HOA bylaws required a majority vote of all homeowners for rule changes, not just board approval. I attended that meeting. It was glorious. Karen stood at the front of the room, face flushed, voice shaking. We need to revise our enforcement policies to allow for reasonable discretion. These minor violations are being weaponized by certain individuals to harass board members. She was looking right at me. I raised my hand. Mr. Chin, you are not recognized to speak. We're not taking comments from the floor. Actually, Section 15.2 of the bylaws states that any HOA member may address the board during meetings on matters of community concern. I'd like to speak about enforcement consistency. The other board members, who'd clearly grown tired of Karen's tyranny over the years, nodded. She had to let me talk. I stood up, calm and collected. I just want to say that I appreciate the HOA's commitment to maintaining community standards. When I purchased my lot, I did extensive research into the rules and regulations. I've made sure everything I've done complies fully with the bylaws. The wall, the violation complaints, everything. I believe in following the rules. All of them. Equally. For everyone. The room was silent. A few people were smiling. Karen's hands were shaking. The vote failed. The enforcement policies stayed in place. Karen had to fix her violations or pay escalating fines. And the wall stayed up. But the absolute best part came 3 weeks later. Karen, in her infinite wisdom, decided to file yet another lawsuit. This time against me and the HOA, claiming the wall approval was improper and demanding it be removed. She was suing her own HOA, the organization she presided over. The board held another emergency meeting. This one was to discuss Karen's lawsuit and the potential liability it created. The HOA attorney pointed out that Karen was creating a massive conflict of interest by suing the organization she led. The board voted 4-1 to request her resignation. She refused. So they called for a special election. The bylaws allowed for removal of board members with a 2/3 vote of homeowners. The vote was held in February. I attended, sitting in the back row, watching as homeowner after homeowner stood up to share their stories of Karen's petty tyranny. The guy with the 3.2-inch grass. The family with the Christmas lights. A woman who'd been fined because her house number plaque was half an inch too small. The vote was 61-3. Karen was removed from the board, effective immediately. She stood there in front of everyone, papers clutched in her shaking hands, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She'd lost everything. Her power, her position, her authority. But I still had one more move to make. See those lawsuits she'd filed against me? My attorney Marcus had been quietly working on the countersuit. In March, we got our hearing. The judge took one look at the evidence, the HOA bylaw definitions, the photos of Karen's own violations, the timeline of harassment, and the frivolous lawsuit filings, and he didn't even need a full day to decide. Judgment in favor of Alex Chin. $50,000 in damages. Full legal fees, which had climbed to $18,000. And a permanent restraining order prohibiting Karen Whitmore from contacting me through any means for any reason. Karen's lawsuit against me and the HOA was dismissed with prejudice the same week. She was ordered to pay the HOA's legal fees. Another $12,000. But the final piece of revenge, the one that truly made everything perfect, came when I listed my vacant lot for sale in April. The lot with the wall. I priced it at $90,000. A young couple bought it within 3 days. They loved the privacy fence, they said. Perfect for their dogs. Karen's house, directly across the street, had been listed for sale in March. She was trying to escape, to move away from the neighborhood she'd terrorized. But here's the thing about real estate: location matters. View matters. Her house, now with a permanent view of a 10-foot beige wall, wasn't getting offers. She'd started at $450,000. After 2 months, she dropped to $399,000. Still nothing. I ran into her one day at the neighborhood mailbox cluster. Pure coincidence. She saw me, and I watched the recognition dawn in her eyes. Then the anger. Then something else. Defeat. Complete and total defeat. She understood. Finally, fully understood. That the delivery driver she'd harassed, the person she tried to destroy over parking violations that didn't even exist, had systematically dismantled her entire life. I'd used her own rules, her own system, her own HOA against her. I'd beaten her legally, financially, and socially. And there was nothing she could do about it. Every move I'd made was perfectly legal, properly approved, and completely justified. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes were wide, almost glassy. I could see her mind working, calculating, realizing the full scope of what I'd done. The walls she'd see every day until her house finally sold. The legal debts. The humiliation of being removed from her throne. All of it because she couldn't let a DoorDash driver deliver some food in peace. I didn't say anything. I just nodded politely, collected my mail, and walked back to my car. Behind me, I heard a sound. Something between a gasp and a sob. I didn't look back. If you loved this story as much as I loved delivering it, smash that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. We've got tons more epic revenge stories coming your way, and you definitely don't want to miss a single one. Hit that notification bell too, so you'll know the moment we drop the next dose of karma. Thanks for watching.